Pav, welcome to the ROKMAN podcast. How are we doing?
I'm good, Terry. Thanks for having me.
How's the t-shirt treating you? I can see you wearing it there.
It's nice. You can see it is accentuating the pecs here. There, and you can see the ROKMAN logo. It's nice on the arms, as you can see.
Certainly filling it out better than I do, anyway.
Nice. It's really nice. I like the material. The construction is very good. Nice.
Yeah, the quality's getting better. That's for sure. As we're finding better suppliers and better printers as well, the quality is upping. I hope so, and I hope people are.
I really like even the simple cotton ones are very nice and soft. It's very nice cotton that you have. So yeah, it's a good quality. Nice to wear.
Thank you very much. Well, before we dive in, Pav, I've got a couple of public service announcements to read out, just so people know who we are and what the hell we're doing here. So I'm Terry, the founder of ROKMAN, and for those who don't know, ROKMAN is a mental resilience movement for those with a deep desire to test their limits, forge unbreakable resilience, and improve their well-being. We provide the information, tools, and support to inspire action to overcome the most intimidating challenges possible in running, fitness, and life. The aim of the podcast tonight is to offer up some insight and inspiration on pushing our limits, hopefully inspiring others to go out and push their own limits in order to improve their own resilience, fitness, health, well-being, etc. And if you'd like to be notified of new podcast releases, be sure to hit the subscribe button or the follow button. And if you take some value from this podcast, please be sure to give us the thumbs up or leave us a review. There's no money behind these podcasts. They're totally free. So we rely on the likes, shares, comments, reviews, subscribes to grow the audience. So any interaction is greatly appreciated. And if you don't do it, Pav has said he's going to come round to your door personally and give you a what for.
I'm a peaceful man, Terry. I'm a peaceful man.
Yeah, he will peacefully make you and force you to subscribe. I like it. So today we have Pavandeep
Pavandeep Singh. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And for people who don't know, in 1 minute or less, who the hell are you?
I am no one. Who am I? I'm just, I don't like that question. It's hard to answer those questions. Who am I? I answered an interview that asked me the same question, that I'm just some guy from Slough that just had some pretty decent opportunities and made the most of them. Some of those which took me to the Channel 4's SCS Who Dares Wins. Others that gave me quite a decent career as an eye surgeon. And then for some reason I did a bit of close protection training and expedition medicine training and some trauma life support training. And yeah, I guess I'm just someone who wants to push the limits and the boundaries. And that's just taken me on a little journey throughout life. And here we are,
Yeah. Well, I think you're being very modest. Like from what I've seen, it's all very impressive. Like I first came about you on SCS Who Dares Wins, so you were on Series 5, right?
Yeah.
Series 5.
Yes.
Which was only, I think it was in 2020, wasn't it? The end of 2020 it came out.
October 2019 was when we did it, but it was aired in January 2020.
Yeah, and then from learning more about you and getting to know you, you're also training to be an eye surgeon. Surely that must be one of the most intricate surgeons out there, right? It has to be.
It is very intricate because you kind of your working space is like sometimes 3 or 4 millimeters or less. In the case of retinal surgery, which I don't do, but my colleagues do, you're talking about micrometers. And obviously, you got to. And the neurosurgeons are pretty intricate as well. But we'd say that, amongst probably it's microsurgery, that what we do rather than your standard surgery. So it's a small space to work in.
It sounds incredible. And the other bit you've done is close protection, right?
Yeah, I've done a bit of that, just getting the courses done, getting some of the experience. It's been really useful actually in terms of your the way you operate in life, the way you see the world around you. The way you kind of assess risks and try and look after people and your family, yourself, the public, it really kind of opens your eyes to potential dangers and trying to stay one step ahead, or as the United States Marines call it, left of bang. So
Left
the
of
timeline,
bang.
yeah. So the timeline is when the bang happens, you want to be left of bang because you want to see it before the bang happens. You want to be proactive rather than reactive.
So do you see the world differently now you're walking around Slough and...
Well, you know what, it's an ongoing process, and it actually began, I guess, when I was in my late teens going to uni, because roughly 7/7 happened at that point. I'm not sure what year I was in, but I was at maybe second year or third year or something like that. So I was going on the tubes every day, in the trains, and I was always the kind of person, and I think we're going to probably touch upon faith afterwards, but in terms of my faith, it's all about protecting others, being a guardian, and well, the way I've interpreted it anyways, it's all about being the last line of defense. So, you know, there was a bit of I think kind of the world changed after 9/11 and then 7/7, and we were all living in a much more dangerous kind of world. So I decided to look at the people I admired, which were, you know, just heroes in movies, military people, because they have values I think that are, you know, very, very useful and something that we should all aim for. And I broke it down into, you know, what makes these people tick. And situational awareness was one of those, staying alert. And I thought, well, you know, fair enough, I'm a student, but there's no reason why I can't hone and develop certain qualities that could make the difference. You know, if you give yourself a 2% or a 1% chance of surviving a hostile situation, you might help your fellow man, you might stay alive a little bit longer to do something. And I thought, well, those odds are good, I'll take those odds, I'll work on it. So I used to sit in the train, and I used to look at people, and I used to think, okay, how would you identify a threat? If this person was a threat, what would you do? And it's all mental rehearsal. You visualize things, you kind of go through it in your head, because that's like when we do training, right? It's like if it does happen, your brain has gone through some form of mental model. So you won't freeze like a rabbit in the headlights. You might have some protocol to engage and get stuck in. And if you die, you die. But if it makes a difference, then, you know, I'd rather die making a difference than being frozen.
It's funny what you said about that repetition in your mind, because I have read somewhere before that, say, as you're saying, with training, when you rehearse for something and you're doing it physically, that's the best way to prepare. But apparently you can also prepare just as well by not doing it physically, but just imagining it in your head. And I think it's mad how that actually does help. I think boxers do it.
Yeah.
I'm always banging on about boxers in these podcasts, but boxers do it. They'll always imagine the fight. They'll imagine how they're going to win. And then it's all about just making that happen then.
Definitely. You have to visualize it. And Arnold Schwarzenegger always used to say, and I watch his speeches all the time, but he said he visualized his success. And like when training, even if you're going to do a set, like when I do a set of heavy squat, and I want to do 5 reps, I visualize every rep. And I go through my breathing. So like, okay, I breathe in, hit the rep. Okay. And I do that 5 times, and I imagine the whole set in my head, and then I do it. And I don't think I've ever failed a set when I've focused on it in that sense.
Yeah.
So,
has it ever happened where you haven't focused and then you've missed it, and you'd be like, well, that's why?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Because I'm not always at 100%. I'm just a bit distracted, and yeah, you know, I think because the visualization, it kind of focuses you and it gets you in the moment.
It's good. I never thought about that. So it's this training that you undergoing. It's a good way of rehearsing stressful situations and situations with high amounts of pressure, because it's all about remaining calm. And it must give you maybe like a checklist to go through. You know, remain calm, check this, check A, check B, check C.
Yeah.
And you can take that through. This isn't just like you know, high stakes situations. You could take that through for any stressful situation in your life, even your surgery, right?
I mean, exactly. With surgery, when I'm actually scrubbing up, I'm going through the motions in my head. I have I have a ritual when I'm scrubbing up. I'm going through things in my head. It's my like, leave me alone time. I'm getting ready for this, and then you visualize the successful surgery. And when you're in there, and sometimes I'm like, sometimes things are a bit pear-shaped, and like you gotta stay calm and just kind of block everything out. It's a very focused affair. And yeah, you can't panic, and you have to really just stay on task. And then that applies everywhere else, because I mean, I had my final professional exams, and I was very aware when I was sat there, I was nervous, right? And I could feel the heart going, and I was like, oh my God, I'm really nervous, I'm really anxious now. And then the other voice kicked in and said, well, this is great, because now's the time to practice all that stuff you're on about all the time. Yeah. All the stuff that you talk about, the philosophy, the Stoicism. This is the best opportunity, take it. So I was like, right, okay. And it wasn't working. I was like, no.
It's a load of rubbish.
No, because I just couldn't get myself back. But I was like, right, fine. That exam's in 5 minutes. The guy's gonna call you, because what they do is they bring you in, give you a time, then they make you wait for like an unknown time before they take you in. So you're not sure when it's gonna happen. And I thought, right, you can't do anything about it. Just think of your breathing and just let it go now, because you've done your preparation. You know, you trust your knowledge now, trust your knowledge. And I dare say it, then it started to work. But it was only after like this realization of embrace the moment, don't be afraid of it now, because now's the golden opportunity to put into test all that stuff you talk about. So embrace it.
It's we were talking about Ant Middleton's fear bubble before we came on, weren't we? And I think that's a prime example of one of his lessons, is that in that moment, it's like it's wasted energy, all that anxiety and nervousness that you're feeling, and you can't do anything about it. It's almost, it's a waste. And I think his concept was allow yourself to only be nervous when there's a real situation to be nervous about. So it's like, relax, forget about it. It's only when you start putting that pen on paper in your exam, then you're allowed to be nervous, and then you can be focused on the task. I suppose because he was saying it causes burnout, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly it. And I was using the fear bubble technique, and I was reading that book up until we began the course in October 2019. I just got it before I took it with me on the prep, and it's a brilliant technique. And I remember very specifically the task when you have to do the backwards dive off the platform into the water, right? And like someone who's really can't swim, has never swum before, not been in the sea. I remember we came around the like one of the little ridges, and you could see his silhouette on the platform, you know, standing like that. Yeah. And I knew what was going to come. And then I could feel myself getting a bit worked up, but I thought, no, your time to get nervous is when you're standing on that edge, right? For now, just take it in. And all you're going to have to do is jump, right? That's it. It's not that hard. It is harder than it looks, because jumping backwards with no support is kind of going against your natural reflexes. The way to do it is to practice falling on the bed the night before. That's what I did. Yeah, I just threw myself on the bed just to get over that when you just pass 45 degrees, when you try and stop it, let that go. And you're right. It's the fear bubble is, and it's a really good technique.
Yeah, I think that's a nice segue actually into your SAS experience. So you were obviously on Channel 4's SAS, Who Dares Wins. As we said, season 5, filmed in 2019, published or put out there in 2020. I thought it was one of my favorite series actually. I think you had some strong characters on there. You had yourself. You were I remember you were one of my favorites from the start. I was like, yes, the guy in the turban, the Sikh, I love him. And that was before you even spoke and stuff. I thought brilliant. James Priestley, obviously, he's sent back from the future, and he's like a Terminator, sent back through time to just do nuts stuff. Was it Gary O and Kim as well? There's a few others.
Not Gary. Chris.
No, Chris. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Chris is like Wolverine. He was.
Yeah, he looks it as well. He's a beast. You had some really big athletic people on there, and I think that's what I liked about it in the previous series. Is you really had you had like the top end civilian athletes. You know,
we had some good specimens on that one. Yeah.
So how did it come about? What made you like where in your life were you at that time, and what made you want to put yourself through something like that?
I've been a big fan of the show from day one when I first saw it, the series 1 in Wales. prior to all this stuff happening on the TV and the world learning about it, I was just like a bit of a military nerd. And the SAS had always been like these shadow warriors, you know, who swoop in from the rooftops and are like the pinnacle of human performance. And I don't think that's an exaggeration, because of what they do and in the circumstances in which they do it is quite beyond the normal average person, and quite beyond the non-average person as well, right? So I was always into that kind of like, you know, I'm also into the whole warrior stuff as well, right? As you know, and because we got this warrior saint concept in my faith. And a while back, I'd thought, well, who are the most amazing, who are the most current day, who are the warriors of the current day? You would say the special forces. Like if you're living back in ancient Greece, you'd say maybe the Spartans or someone, right? So there was always kind of trying to see what makes them tick, learn from it, you read the books, etc. So when the show came, I was like, this is a great show. And then you just watch it on TV and you're like doting on their every word to learn about, you know, how they deal with fear and anxiety, etc. And then one day you just think, well, I wonder how you apply for that show. Let's just Google something. And then I Googled it and it came out, so they give it a shot. Went for season 4, didn't get it. Went for season 5, kind of got it. And then that was that, really.
Yeah. And what did you have to do to do it? Because there's obviously a number of tests. Did you pass the tests good?
Yeah,
they're quite high standards.
They're okay. It depends. Yeah, I mean, we actually had, prior to the ones when we did it, you had to run, and this is one of our ROKMAN tests, you had to do the 1.5 miles in 9.5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite hard. We know that, right? That's not easy to do.
That's not easy at all. I've still not been able to break that 9.5 minute barrier.
But they kind of changed it, I think, for ours and subsequently, or maybe even the one just before. They'd done the beep test to a certain level. And I personally found that easier, yeah, which is fine. I mean, I think if it had been the 9.5 minute, you train for that. So you train for whatever the requirement is, right? After that, you have to do the press-ups, sit-ups test in a certain time period. And it's all quite strict because they have instructors there and you have to reach a certain depth and press ups properly, etc. And kind of a sandbag carry, which is quite easy, a jerry can carry, which is quite easy. I would say someone who's I wouldn't say quite fit, not your usual like gym bunny types, but someone who's got a bit of training behind them. A lot of our ROKMAN guys would probably pass that test easy. Yeah. And then it kind of comes into how you get on that show is about what your background is, what your story is, yeah, because they have a TV show to make, right? So you got to have a bit of a story to kind of bring certain characters together. Yeah.
And how did you get on? So what was you were talking about you mentioned then at the start that you'd never swum before, right? So how did you prepare for that? Like,
well, they unfortunately it was a very water-based series, the one I was going to go on, which is
brilliant, yeah, cracking
of all of them, right?
Yeah.
And then they said that, you know, I got a call saying, yeah, we really like you, but you know your inability to swim is a problem. So can you learn to swim in like a month, please? So I said, well, I can try, but how much do you need me to swim? And they said, well, if you can manage about a length or two in the pool, we'll take that, you know. I was like, all right, fine. So I just went and got like lessons with people and got instructors trying to help me out, and just spent a lot of time, and I just about managed to do a decent length. Well, not a decent length, a length. Yeah. Where I got from one side to the other side. It's actually one of my posts on my page on my Instagram, but it's quite funny, some weird backstroke thing. But anyway, I sent that in and they seemed to be okay with it, and that was that, you know.
Yeah. And did you get your 50-meter badge to sew onto your trunks?
No, I wasn't that good.
Jeez, they didn't even give me the badge. Are you still swimming now? Are you keeping up?
Well, then COVID hit afterwards, and now since now I'm trying to get back. It is my mission now to actually become a proficient swimmer. I think I can, I'm good at all the running and the lifting and all that kind of stuff, but I want to turn into one of those I look at good swimmers in awe. You know, I want to be very adept in the water now. So that's my next task. I'll get it. It'll be fine. I just need to find the time to do it.
There's a lot of technique to it, isn't there? Like I used to go do lengths. This was years ago now, and I'd be busting my ass, you know, really swimming really hard, and then you'd have some middle-aged lady next to me just glide right past me, like gently. I don't know how they do it. It must be a lot to do with technique, but
I do that. I'm there and I'm like, oh, like, and then you've got these little 7-year-old kids just like floating around.
It's crazy. I don't get it. So what do you train at the moment like? Because I know you like your squats and stuff, and you make mincemeat of all the ROKMAN challenges. What does your weekly training look like? How are you focusing it?
It's always focused around some kind of powerlifting slash, I wouldn't really say bodybuilding, more like a powerlifting bodybuilding hybrid, strength based really. It always was strength based, even prior to SAS, after it. So I have a foundation. I believe, and I this isn't my quote, but it rings true, that strength is the foundation of all virtue, they say, right? And you could say virtue of athletic virtue, but I would expand it to say even non-athletic virtues. But I like structuring it around the squat, the deadlift, overhead press, bench press, and a heavy row, because that's like the fundamental compound moves. Mm-hmm. And then kind of like when SAS began, I guess training for that, I really paid more focus to cardiovascular capacity and conditioning, being able to run a 5K at a decent time, at 3 miles, going up hills, etc. And then after that, coming out, COVID hit, and the ROKMAN challenges, I think almost started around that time, maybe.
Yeah, exactly that time, yeah.
So then that was really good stimulus. I incorporated that. So nowadays it's a mix between powerlifting and running. I wouldn't call myself a runner, but I like having a decent 5K time in the bank. I think that's a good thing to have in you, to be able to lift hard, run hard, because you want to be capable. I want to be a capable person, so lifting stuff, running, being fit all the way,
Yeah, definitely. It's like life skills, isn't it? Like if you're working in close quarter protection, yeah, and you have to chase someone and you're going to gas after 100 meters, exactly. It is for general life. I've always thought that. It's like, I want to be able to run away from a policeman in town or something if I've done something wrong. Not that I ever do. But I want that strength to hop a fence. I want the speed to run away,
That's a good mindset thing. That's funny. You said, someone asked me once, I used to run a lot in the gym, and some of the regulars asked, so Pav, why are you running so much? And he said, do you want to run away from someone? And I was like, my answer was no, if I need to chase someone down, right? Because I'm not going to run from someone, that's mindset, right?
Yeah.
You're going to chase them down. You're going to chase the bad guy down.
Yeah, like the wolf. Like the wolf.
Yeah.
Before we move on to your faith, I just want to just ask one quick question or two quick questions on the SAS experience before we move on. So I'd like to know, what was your hardest, most, your lowest moment on there, and sort of how did you push through? What motivated? How did you force your way through it? And what was your most standout, rewarding moment on there?
Okay, and there's one. All right. There wasn't just one lowest moment. what happened?
Continuous.
What happens is the first 2 days are a big shock to your system. Yeah. So that you got to survive that somehow and not hand it in. The next few days are the kind of panic and despair sets in. You're like, I can't do this. I can't do that. I was like that. I many times I was putting my socks on, and once I was in such a deep sleep, because you don't get much sleep, and they came in shouting, and I had no idea where I was. I woke up from such a deep sleep. It took me 2 seconds to figure out what the hell is this place. And then and you're shaking, trying to put your socks on, you're shaking. And I remember saying to myself, I can't do this anymore. Can't do this. And, but you do it. You know what I mean? Right? You don't not do it. And then after those days of slight panic and despair, then you start to realize that you got through yesterday, you got through the day before that. The acceptance phase comes. And then you become like the Goggins machine, where it's like, I'm just going to do this. Like, I'm in this now. I'm here. Like, I've embraced it. I've embraced the suffering, like you've got behind you, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's very hard tasks, like like the log carry up the mountain was pretty difficult, because it was just like raining and like 50 miles per hour winds and all sorts. The lack of food, lack of sleep. I think Jimmy said something similar. There wasn't very one specific thing. It was just the constant barrage of lack of food, lack of sleep, cold, wet, always fear of when they're going to come in and make you do stuff, shouting, and this constant anxiety is designed to like just break you down. And then, but that's the beauty of it as well, because it takes you to a place that you couldn't put yourself in voluntarily unless you're a psychopath, but most people aren't, right? Because you wouldn't naturally, you'd pull out much before that. It's only when someone's there making you do it, you are, depending on your mindset, you're going to stay there because you've come for that, right? You've come to learn something here. You're not going to walk away from it. So that was my mentality there.
Yeah, it's funny. I did a podcast with Ollie Smith, who the podcast will be published very soon, the other day, and we spoke about that. We were saying that this is what endurance challenges or any sort of fitness challenge allows you to do, is to put you physically and mentally in a position that you would never be in this sort of modern civilized world. And I think it's what us as humans crave. You know, I personally believe that. I think that we crave this challenge. And you still there, Pav?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's what they give us. They give us the opportunity to put ourselves through these situations and learn about ourselves and grow, right? Did you learn anything? What were the biggest lessons you took away from the show?
I learned how I react when I'm overwhelmed and really stressed, which is a lot of the time. I know I'm an overthinker about things. I overanalyze stuff. So I'm someone who would sometimes predict catastrophe even if it's not going to come. So I'm like doing all my calculations of this much left to do, how much, I learned to let go of that. After, it's not worth it. You just got to be in the moment. I learned what you kind of learn at a very deep psychological, neurological level. I'd even go as far as saying, because I do think that the high levels of constant stress and perceived danger affect your primitive brain, your limbic system, as it's known as, rather than your cortical conscious brain that we use for conscious work. I think it goes deeper than that, into the fear centers, because you are in constant stress and fear. But what it does to you, like when you get to that acceptance phase, you realize you can do stuff. You realize there is only an end if you say there is an end. As in, you only will give up if you decide to give up. And if someone had said to us, "Oh, you're going to do this tomorrow," I might have been like, "That's not going to happen, man." But when you're on that mountain, and they just say, "Right, go and turn around and do that last 5K again," you're like, "Okay, fine," and you're like in zombie mode, and you just do it. So coming out, and I remember Goggins said that he's like our patron saint.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, we need a big picture, a big mural of him attacking a ball or something like that,
But Goggins said that on the other side of suffering is a beautiful world. That was his quote. And that literally came to me when I came out, because I came out into another world. And since then, and I was saying this to Ant a few weeks ago, I said, there's nothing now that, even if you're stuck in something terrible and difficult, be it a training session or something worse, and even if you can't see the end of the tunnel, if you can't see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel, you just know in yourself now, I believe, that if I just stick to my guns, stick to my technique, stick to my code, I will get through it. And because that's what we did on the course. You do not give up. That is never in the question. You never give up. You just keep grinding, and the rewards will come. And I think that's probably the best lesson for life, isn't it?
Yeah. It'll be all right in the end, because if it's not all right, it's not the end.
Yeah.
Something like that. I like that one.
Just keep going.
How important to you is it to keep testing yourself? Because obviously I see these as like a COVID vaccine. They start to dwindle after a few months, the resilience you build up. How important is it to keep challenging yourself? Really,
really, really important. And you can get into a false sense of security when you reach a pinnacle of staying there and thinking, right, I'm done. And then if you stay in that mode for too long, you've dropped right down again. And I was afraid of, if I come out of SAS, how is anything going to top that? What will I do? But no, you just find stuff to do.
You found ROKMAN.
Exactly, Ashley. No, seriously, that when I was doing the ROKMAN challenges, and especially when it became colder in the end of 2020, running out in the wind and in the cold weather, it kind of stimulated Raze in the sky where we were, and that kind of tightness in your chest. And when it rained, I was reminded of it all. You've got to, like, you can't stay where you are, because I don't think humans were built for that. And I think part of the suffering of the world today and the malaise is because of this acceptance of mediocrity, which has crept up on us like a bit of a cancer. We look for happiness, but we've never defined our happiness. We've never asked ourselves, what is this happiness I'm looking for? And Jordan Peterson nicely kind of describes it, as well as others, to say that actually, and you may have heard this saying, but it's the climb is the happiness, the struggle. Because when you get to that peak and the pinnacle, you're like, okay, now what? And it's the human nature, I think, is to keep on evolving and challenging oneself. And to me, that's essentially one of the meanings of life. And I'd say, if you said to me, what's your reason for being? Why are you on this earth? Is to keep on improving. And then that brings me to the faith aspect, because what are you improving to? Well, what would be the highest peak to achieve? That would be perfection, theoretically speaking, right? None of us are perfect. We know that. We can't be, we're human. But if we keep striving for such a pinnacle which is unreachable, only good things can come from that, right? And perfection, however you want to define it, you can call it a god, you can call it God. You don't have to be a religious person. You can call it the highest collection of all the virtues that humankind has described. But it's a judge. It's a judge of some form, be it God, if you want to call it that. Even if you're someone who doesn't believe in God, fine, you must have some value structure, right? And your job, I believe, my job, or your job, anyone's job, is to try and get closer and closer and closer to that in incremental steps throughout your life. And that includes, that doesn't mean you become like some recluse who just trains all the time. That will also include family life, your career. You can pick and choose your goal. You can pick your perfection to some degree, right? And that's what it's all about, I think. And that, I think, gives man and woman happiness. That's the definition, I'd say.
Yeah, it's funny. You reminded me of a graph I've seen before. It was in. Have you ever read Derren Brown's Happiness?
No, I know Dan Brown though. But...
Yeah, he wrote a book, like completely nothing to do with illusions or anything like that. It's on happiness, and it's mostly to do with Stoicism. And there's a graph in there, which is like a 45-degree graph, and you'd call that graph challenge or struggle. And they said happiness is keeping in the middle of that graph of struggle. If it's too hard, say up here, you hate it. If it's too soft, you don't grow. And they were saying happiness is found along that line. It's the journey. And you were saying about these modern times. Well, I think that's it. Where there's such a protective nature and a mollycoddling of people nowadays. We must hide them from everything that can hurt them or cause offense. And what that's doing is putting them in that lower half of the graph. They're not going to be challenged. They're going to sort of stagnate,
There's again, I'll quote Jordan Peterson again, but he says, and I believe in this, is you don't make the world safer, you make people braver.
Yeah.
I think that's very important to realize. And we also, there's so much now, like all this mental health stuff that goes around, right? And a lot of which is from people that are quite poorly qualified, I'd say, to actually discuss what is essentially psychology. But it's good intentions, so you got to give credit for that. But I don't fully believe in the idea that the acceptance of accept yourself as who you are to some degree, in the sense that it's a phrase that's bandied around because it's a nice buzzword to impress followers and be an influencer. And of course, you have to accept who you are because you are who you are, right? But you must never be content with your degree of skills, the things that you can change. You have to always be striving for more, because I think that's, otherwise you'll just slip into mediocrity. and just plateau off.
Totally. I think it's not about accepting who you are. I think you have to accept the position you're in, but then from that acceptance, you need to then improve. Like, for example, I mean, it's an easy one to go to, but say if you're overweight, don't accept that you're overweight and just live your life overweight. Do something about it. And I think that's, you're right. This,
you're not any less of a person. You're a person, if you're overweight and obese, you're a person of value. Everyone has a role to play in this world, right? I truly believe that. But to be honest, you're overweight, you're obese. It's not good for your health. You need to do something about it, because then you will hopefully live longer, be of more service to your family and the society around you. And that's good for everyone, man. Just like, so there's people shouldn't take offense at that. And people who go around telling these people to say, no, it's okay. You're lovely as you are. Don't worry about the world. I think that's a little bit, it's coming from the right place. I think it's a bit misguided, really.
Yeah, well, I think that person's going to go through their lives continually getting upset, rather than doing something about it to improve their lives. They're just going to stay in that same position, and they're going to have the same experiences over and over and over again. And if anything, that's going to grind you down, and that's going to affect your mental health more than anything.
Yeah. What I found, and on the subject of physical challenges, what I found with training over my life is, when I started as a 17, 18-year-old skinny fat kid, I was about 67 kilos. I started squatting. I was like looking at the bodybuilders and was like, oh wow, this is so cool. And I thought, all right, when I squat my body weight, that'll be so cool, right? And okay, so I did a 70 kilo squat. I was like, wow. And then I thought, oh, when I squat 100 kilos, it's like 100 kilos, man, that'd be so cool. And I did it. It was great. And like now I'm in the like range of like, it's not amazing, but it's like 150, 160 for reps, which for me is okay. But what that journey has done over the years has told my brain that you can achieve stuff that at one point you thought was impossible. Like you tell the starting off kid that you can squat close to, you're squatting 160, 170. You're like, whoa. I remember I was young, and some powerlifter guy came into the gym, and he had his like hoodie on and his belt on, and we hadn't seen him before. He was like, who is this guy? This shadowy figure, right? And he goes up the squat rack, and he's got some of his bros with him, and they're like, slap his back. Yeah, he's like, ooh, ooh. And he loads up 160, and he does 10 reps on it. And it depends where you train, because for some of the guys I've trained with, that's a warm-up for them. Yeah. But for me back then, it's all relative, right? For me back then, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. You're like, but like then one day you do that yourself, and you're like, wow. And you look back, and you have to remember, you have to be very conscious of this. You have to think, 10 years ago, I thought this was impossible.
Mm.
But today I've just shown it isn't for me. Yeah. And that realization, I think, again, imprints something on your brain. And that's the beauty of physical challenge. And I think people, it's not a vain pursuit. It's not just about looking good or looking, losing weight and all that kind of stuff. That's great. But it's what it does for your self-esteem. It's unbeatable. And I think, if you want to get kids, youngsters to, get their self-esteem up, to be confident individuals, I believe the power of sport, the power of training is the key to unlock all of that.
Definitely. I think that's where ROKMAN comes in. We do challenges because you're not just doing fitness for the sake of fitness. You're also not doing it for visual aesthetics. You're pushing your limits. You're improving your health, you're improving your fitness, and you're achieving a tangible goal. And I think that the amount of pride you get from that, and self-belief and confidence and improvement is second to none. But it's funny that you were saying about the journey, because people need to say, people starting at the bottom of whatever journey they are, they could maybe quite be overwhelmed or intimidated by this, the big goal, but it's just incremental improvements. You just focus on the first step, get that first, and then we can do it. Exactly.
Don't look at the end goal, because that will scare you, and that's probably way out of your league at the moment. Just look at tomorrow's goal. Just look at getting your session in. The first goal is, it's raining tomorrow, but I was planning to train tomorrow. There's your target there.
Yeah.
Don't give in. If you train in the rain, you're literally going to be entering there's a parallel universe now. The guy who trained in the rain and the guy who decided to leave it and stay indoors, right? And those paths now are going to diverge. So
Yeah.
you have the power in your hands to be the hero of that story. And that's what I love about it. I always like the potential we all have as humans, and we sometimes forget that. We kind of think it's external forces, and that we can talk about Stoicism afterwards, but that power is in your hands every day. And I find that really exciting, that we've been given this chance in this life to be, these sentient beings that we are, and to take that path. So it's really exciting.
It's totally. Talk to me about your faith then, because obviously you're a Sikh, and I remember when we did the interview the first time around, I sort of knew a Sikhs, and I always knew a few, and they were really cool guys. But then you explaining it in your interview, I was like, wow, this is on another level. This is almost aligning with Stoicism and mental resilience and being your best self and stuff like that. Bang on. Talk to me a bit about that then.
I mean, yeah, you're right. It does. Because, I mean, I believe, people talk about the truth, but I think that the truth has been, there's stuff throughout the centuries where people always touched upon the truth, right, what it was as it is, right? You got to look at, I think we kind of believe in the way we see God as this kind of, and the other thing I need to mention, I think, is religion itself, right? Because nowadays, if you talk about religion, some people get a bit of an allergy to the word, right? And it's like, we mustn't talk about that. And I think partly that's because of the custodians of religion, the people who practice religion, have turned it into what I call like a tribal or like a club thing, where it's like, join my club, it's better than that club. And all you have to do is believe in this person or woman or whatever, and you're sorted, right? Okay, so we've got his card now, he's part of our gang, sorted, right? And then that gang's not a good one. And then you end up having a war, and then history is written, right?
Yeah.
I believe that religion and faith was always meant to be about development of the self towards the ultimate goal. Okay, now you can define the ultimate goal however you like. For me, it's God. And we have multiple ways of describing God in the Sikh faith, but it's like an energy that is formless, that has many forms and is formless, something that is timeless. That's an amazing concept. If you try and sit down and think of an entity which is beyond time, your mind cannot fathom it. Something that's infinite, undying, not created, but also all the virtues we have, like courage, bravery. I believe that no matter what faith you believe in, and even if you're an atheist or whatever, the collection of the highest virtues that we as humans talk about, I think that's a form of God. That's the description in a way, isn't it? Because if God is perfection, so that's your aim, right? And in my faith, so in the Sikh faith, our religious leaders, our gurus, as they were, teachers, the divine beings, that was their message. Basically, it was like, man, recognize yourself, that in your soul is a piece of that divine. You're like the droplet that has been separated from the ocean. Your job now is to combine with it. So that's all, a job of, kind of spirituality, meditation, going inside, getting rid of the ego, the vices, the anger, the greed, the lust, the attachments and stuff. There's something you might like. I've got a little quotation to read. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What we got?
This sums it up. So I think there's always various levels of analysis when you're discussing topics like this, but this is a writing from our scriptures. I don't like using the word scripture because, again, that's a very anglicized term, westernized term, because the word we call it is our guru, which is our teacher. But we have our scripture, which is we call our guru, which is basically our knowledge, isn't it? Knowledge. It's not some object. Knowledge is your guru, your teacher, right? Wisdom is your teacher. So anyway, we had 10 gurus, and the ninth guru wrote this. I'll just read the English meaning of it. It's a relatively short piece. So it goes, that man or woman, but we'll just stick with man for this purpose of the translation. That man who in the midst of pain does not feel pain, who is not affected by pleasure, affection, or fear, and who looks alike upon gold and dust. who is not swayed by either slander or praise, nor affected by greed, attachment, or pride, who remains unaffected by joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor, who renounces all hopes and desires and remains desireless in the world, who is not touched by sexual desire or anger. Within his heart, God dwells. That man, blessed by the Guru's grace, understands this way. O Nanak, Nanak was the first Guru. O Nanak, he merges with the Lord of the universe, like water with water. Now I find that very profound. I think hopefully you can see in that this the kind of the journey that must be taken to kind of bring that everything into the center, right? So you're not affected by either. You become, and see, Bruce Lee talked about this kind of stuff. The Stoics talk about it, and to me, it's always been a journey of connecting the dots. The truth has been out there, right, for centuries, thousands of years. And why not? Because this God that we talk about, or this universe that gives us these blessings, whatever you want to call it, it's all out there, right? And then in the Sikh faith, it was about the concept of the warrior saint is because essentially the gurus realized that you must have virtue, obviously, the stuff we talk about, compassion, courage, faith. But if you are unable to defend that virtue and the virtue of others, you're not going to be a very good citizen, because you're going to either get killed by the invader, because there was lots of that in those times, or people are going to get killed. Now, the guru who wrote that piece I've just written, he lived probably between the late 1600s, so not too far away. That was the time when India was under the rule of the Mughal Empire, which was, I believe, from Turkey in origin. And they were ruling for several hundred years, and they had a variety of emperors. The emperor at that time was a man called Aurangzeb, and he was a relatively quite a vicious person. He killed his dad, killed his brothers, a nasty guy to try and
yeah, quite, yeah.
So the major religions in India at that time were Islam, because of the Mughals, Hinduism, obviously the main religion, and then the fledgling Sikh faith, which was just like in its early days of like having been around for like 150 years or so, 250 years or so. This emperor Aurangzeb had a mission and to pretty much wipe out all opposition, and they had put in restrictions that no one could keep a court like a king, no one could have an army, no one could wear a turban, because turban was a sign of royalty back in the East, in the Middle East back in those days. So the gurus turned around and said, right, we're going to have an army, we're going to keep our turbans, we're going to grow our hair, have beards, we're going to defy you to every single point, because we are free men. Yeah. Aurangzeb, they say, this may or not be true, but it kind of describes the kind of mindset he had. They said he would only have his nighttime meal, his dinner at night, if he had amassed. So the Hindus wear this sacred thread around their torso. It's called a Janeyu. He'd only have his dinner if he had amassed a few kilos of bloodied Janeyus of Hindus that had been killed.
Right.
Because, right? So at some point, a band of high-ranking Hindu priests, or whatever, they came to the ninth guru because they had no help. There was, the ruling empire of the day was wiping them out. And they came to the guru and they came for help and say, we need someone to stand for us. And this is, don't forget, this is the guru of the faith, leader of an entirely different faith. Guru Tegh Bahadur, his name was. And Tegh Bahadur in our language means the brave sword. So this was someone he's earned the name, right? His father had named him the brave sword because he was also a very detached, saintly, ascetic type, someone who's very a meditative person. I mean, he's a divine being. We believe him as divine beings. But they came to the guru and they said, we need some help. And the guru basically then said, well, it was actually his son who said, who else to help them, father, but you. And the guru's like, you've learned well, of course. So the Guru with about 4 Sikhs basically marched into the capital and said to the emperor, I'm standing for these people. If you can do whatever you like to me, but you're going to leave them alone. And the emperor agreed, whatever his word was worth. But essentially what happened, the Guru was, he never gave in, because the plan then was, okay, well, if we convert the Guru of the Sikhs to Islam, and got nothing against Islam, it's just these guys had the wrong impression of the Islamic faith, which is a beautiful faith, but they had the wrong impression of it. The Guru was tortured, his Sikhs were tortured, people were cut in half with swords, they were put into burning cauldrons, and cotton was wrapped around them and set on fire. Very Game of Thrones type torture, right? Eventually the Guru was executed, but then what happened was the emperor did leave those Hindus alone, because, and who knows what the play of the Lord was, whatever you want to call it, but he went a little bit crazy after that. He had to just leave the capital. He went down south, but I guess the PTSD of killing your father, killing your brothers, killing people eventually catches up with you, right?
Yeah.
And he left, but that was an example of a leader of a faith standing up and giving his life for a completely different faith. So much so, interestingly, that the Gurus and our teachings, we don't, and I respect the Hindu faith, but we don't believe in their teachings. We say that we feel that some of them aren't quite the right way, something ritualistic. Now that's just our opinion, but to not believe in it, but then stand for their right to practice it. Yeah, I think the ultimate wisdom, because you're saying, look, I may not agree with you, but you have the right to do what the heck you want, and no one should kill you for it. So I'm going to stand and I'm going to die for you. And I think that's very profound. And I think that's the essence of the warrior saint. It's not just some bloke who picks up a sword and goes fighting. And to me, that was like, wow, man, how are you gonna? This is your leaders, right? How are you gonna match this? Like, you got something to really, a bar to really aim for. And then there's, it went on to, there's so many examples, but that thing I just read, I think to me is the ultimate aim of. It's not about, and it talks about being desireless. People think that sounds a bit negative, but it's being beyond the desire. You're at this complete peace. You don't have these desires, these needs, these wants. You're just at complete peace with your being. And I guess that's what drives me. That to achieve that is what drives me. Nowhere near it, but I feel that as a person living in this world, the warrior saint means you got to be right in here, yeah, and you be right here as well, because when these and this come together, you can stand up for things, you can stand up for people, you can look after yourself, because strength, as I said, is the foundation of all virtue. If you're strong and you've been training and you've been embracing the suffering, when we're doing the ROKMAN challenges and you want to quit, and that voice tells you to quit, and you say to it no, right? The next time you're in a situation where your anger is being tested, your faith is being tested, your loyalty to your friends, your family, your wife, whoever is being tested, and that temptation is coming, you say to it no, and you remember the pain of your training. That's why I think physical training comes together with your spiritual training. And then to me, that's how the warrior saint is made, right? Yeah. And that's it. So yeah, I kind of lose my train of thought, but
no, it's brilliant. I think it makes so much sense to, like, I get this, to be the protector, right? But it's not, to be the protector of yourself, your loved ones, your mother, your father, your sons, your daughter, the people around you, and if they all live by that code, you're going to limit. It's sort of like damage limitation, isn't it? You're all going to be able to come together and stop any bad stuff happening.
It's not just about that. It's not just about. It's not a security-based faith in that sense, but it's like it's like to be able to conquer yourself, you need to train. You need to embrace the suffering. Suffering of the mental training of calming your mind, and all the like we mentioned about being gold and dust are seen alike. You're desireless. You don't have these temptations, but that really fits in nicely with the physical training, because physical training makes you suffer, and you things happen in your brain. The demons come out when you're training. And like you said, if we all talk about changing the world and society, and we talk about grassroots change, we are all the grassroots. So you're a grassroot, I'm a grassroot. If we focus on conquering ourselves, the world will become a better place if everyone did it.
Yeah, totally. It's funny you were mentioning there about not limiting your desires for. It's one thing I've learned over the last years is that happiness is not found in these like material possessions and these short-lived pleasures, whether it's sort of alcohol or junk food and stuff like that. But it's so hard to miss that. Like I used to live it. I've always been all right, but like, you buy things to make yourself happy. You eat junk food to make yourself happy. You drink or, take drugs if other people do that. But that's not happiness. I think that's pleasure. And so what they're trying to teach you there is perfect. It's like a purist of living, isn't it? And it's in the books. It's all in these religious books from hundreds of years ago. That like the secret's there. They're telling you. But we live in, I suppose, it's this capitalist world, isn't it, where we're being sold these emotions constantly, and it's about controlling those emotions. And when you can control your emotions, you can remain zen and focused and driven person.
I mean, there's two quotes I remember now. You said that one of the gurus said that without contentment, you're never satisfied. Your hunger is never satisfied if you're not content, if you don't have contentment. And also, if the man who conquers his mind conquers the world. And I think that's very pertinent to this, because what is, everyone wants to kind of live forever. I think people are scared of. We talked about death. Did we ever talk about death? We might have done in some other previous talk.
Maybe.
But, it's like everyone is afraid of that, but really, there's so much. It should be something that kind of motivates you to get out there and be your best self, because time is limited, right? The memento mori of the Stoics was just that, like you could go at any moment, right?
So live your life. I read a book on Buddhism actually a couple of years ago, and again, it's all very similar teachings. You'll find this, I suppose, it'll probably be similar teachings to Sikhism. You find it in other religions as well, but they were talking about the acceptance of good times never last and bad times never last. And it's like when you can come to terms to that, you will never get emotional or angry when something bad happens, because you'll know that it will end. And it's the same with good times. You'll be accepting of when they end. You won't be frustrated when they end, because you accept that, yes, it's gone, but there will be more good times. And it's because you mentioned death there, and that's what sort of triggered it in my head. And I suppose that's it, isn't it? If you can accept that you get this wonderful life and it will come to an end, you will get peace in that. You will find peace within that, and then you will hopefully live your life more fuller, that's for sure. You won't just sit there eating your Wotsits on the TV watching Netflix, Well,
you have to have a why of why you're here, right? And I think that's the key to happiness. You got to know your why, and everyone's why is personal and individual to them. I can't sit here and give a speech about why we should be doing things and why we should be living and training or whatever. And again, we don't do this nowadays. You need to contemplate. You have to sit down in a quiet place on your own for maybe 10, 15 minutes a day. It might take you weeks, but you want to figure out what is the greatest good you can achieve. Yeah. And how would you define that? And then you think, right, this is the greatest good that I want to achieve. I'm going to do it like this. And then you actually have your mission statement for life, right? And
it's funny you're saying this, Pav, because as we're talking, I'm pulling it up on my computer. So to help the listeners, right? I don't know if it'll help them, but I've actually written down like these things about myself. I wrote them down, about 4 or 5 years ago. What's my why? Why am I here? And this is my why. So this might just help people or inspire people. This is personal to me. But my mission in life is to inspire strength and resilience within people so that they may overcome the most intimidating of challenges possible. Sounds quite similar to ROKMAN, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
But that's where ROKMAN came from.
Yeah.
It came from me writing this mission statement down, and it was about, I want to be a pillar of support for like my friends and family. I want to help inspire them. And I think it's having this written down has really helped me over the last few years, because it focuses your decisions and your efforts, because you know why you're doing it. You're able to make a better informed decision on where you're going.
And here you are now, 4 to 5 years. It must be, I mean, I'd say I'd be proud of you, you know.
Thank you, Pav. Thank you.
But you know, imagine when you started and you had nothing, and I've seen ROKMAN grow, and I see the passion you put into it, and like your genuine enthusiasm, and I really love it when I see people who have a noble goal and they're passionate about it and they pour themselves into it. That we need more of that in the world. It's really, really refreshing to see that.
Yeah, and you can do it. That's the thing. Is I mean, as I say, I've got 2 kids now. I've got a full-time job and 2 kids and my own training. And you'd think, oh my God, you have no time. But what it almost makes you more efficient at finding time and using time. Because if I don't use that half an hour, that little sliver of time, if I don't use it, it won't get used. So it's made me more proficient at what I do. I've still got no bloody time, but I'm finding a way. I'm hoping as the kids get older, it'll get a bit easier. But let's bring it on to Stoicism while we're there. So one of the things, it was actually written on the ROKMAN About Us page, I think. And I remember in one of your first messages, you were like, fellow Stoic here, sir. I see it. So how similar is that to Sikhism then? It's
interesting because I say the Stoic thought is just that. It's a collection of ideas which transcend, you know, culture and faith and religion. The Sikh faith is what we feel is something that's universal, was never kind of meant to be for one people, as it were. Again, in our current scripture that we see as our guru, the living guru, we bow to it because we see it as a guru, but in there is not just the writings of Sikh gurus, but also saints of Muslim background, Hindu background as well. And that's really interesting because, you know, you've got different faiths, but the thing is, they all achieved that pinnacle. They came from different places. They all achieved that pinnacle of connecting the one, right? So I always believe that, you know, I'm not one person to think that my faith has the exclusivity of the truth, right? Because if I believe in a God that is eternal and was never born and never dying, truth was there at the beginning, right? And I'm sure our good friends Socrates, Epictetus, Cato, you know, they all came across this truth in certain ways, you know, then, and, you know, people like Bruce Lee came across it. So, you know, I think there's, what I just read earlier was, I think, a very Stoic, would be quite a Stoic statement, but it's yeah, I think the main concepts of Stoicism are, you know, like you said, the triangle you mentioned earlier, you know, what do? You what was it?
I'll remind you. So this was the Stoic triangle for happiness. And they were saying, you've got to take responsibility, you've got to focus on what you can control, and you've got to live with arete, I think it's one of the words, probably a Greek word, which means express your highest self in every moment.
There you go. I think that's probably what I take responsibility, express your highest self every moment. That's what's the highest self, you know? That's the question, right? So I would say that from a Sikh perspective, I would say, well, that is your connection to the divine and the divine virtues, because we're told to try and live in connection with those divine virtues at all times. Again, I'll quote Jordan Peterson because he illustrates this point very well. Someone asked him about God and his belief in God, and Jordan Peterson's a very strong Christian, yeah. So, but he goes, I don't believe in God. I act as if God exists. And that's very, very, very very poignant. That is very useful. And I started thinking about it. I was like, how does that work? What does he mean by that, right? And I think I figured it out. And he means if you believe in God, that's fine. Like some people believe in Santa Claus, right? It doesn't really get them anywhere, right?
You get some presents. I'll tell you that though.
But if you act as if God exists, what does that mean? And coming back to what I mentioned earlier, if we see God as the collection of the highest virtues, those virtues are our judge. And rightly so, they should be our judge, because what better judge than perfection? So if you act as if that exists, they're watching you, that God is watching you, you better step up to the bar, you better step up to the plate, right? So I think when you try to live as your highest self, you're trying to always connect to that. And I don't think you can go wrong with that, right? And I think that was the essence of religion. And I think faith and religion has moved away from that, unfortunately, to become more of like I mentioned, like a club culture kind of thing. And but if we had sent the true message of faith and spirituality, people would embrace it. And each to their own. There's wonderful faiths out there. Just get to the core of it, because you, my friend, and everyone listening, you are special. And this is not one of those airy fairy Instagram influencers. Oh, you're so special. This is, you really are special. You can make a difference, and you just have to believe in yourself and get out there. And like you said, take responsibility. Don't whine and whinge about the world. Bloody take it on your hands. And extreme ownership. Jocko Willink, the book Extreme Ownership. You should read that. Yeah, take control. And what was the second one was
be your best self.
Be your best self. And then that's a path. If when we die, none of this exists and there's no afterlife, and it's all a big black void, it doesn't matter, because you can't go wrong, because you spent your whole time trying to be your best self. And that can be like, I mentioned again, because you don't have to be some kind of runner, trainer. You should be. I think you should always be fit and strong. But that also means like, your family life, looking after your parents, your kids, your grandparents, etc., etc. There's so many aspects of our lives that we can target and be the best at. And when we take on those individual challenges, now you must know, now you're a father. Now, before you weren't a father, now you got the first kid and the second kid, and then obviously you got your wife as well, and you got to be a good dad, a good husband, a good person at your job, a good ROKMAN leader, right? You're taking all these challenges. The happiness is in doing that well, isn't it? And then and now look, you're 4-5 years down the line after having this idea of ROKMAN, and here you are, and with God's grace, I hope it keeps growing. I think it will, but how much happiness is that? That's the achievement. You could have sat there and just like done nothing, but here you are. And shining example.
I tell you what, Pav, like I don't make any money from it. That's the thing. If there is any little bits of money, it's put straight back into to help improve the experience for the participants. But what you're quite right. What brings me happiness is, going back to my mission statement about helping to inspire strength and within people so they can overcome stuff. When I get those messages from the members, the team ROKMAN members, when I see their journey, how they've gone through stuff, and they credit ROKMAN for helping them, that's what gets me. I screenshot them, I keep them in a little folder, because I've had some really, really heartfelt messages from it, and that's why I do it. And believe you me, there's been many a times where I've gone, this is too much. I need to drop something. And I've considered stopping ROKMAN, but it's I never will. It's non-negotiable. It's because it's what gives me purpose. That's the thing. It's so inside me now, and I think when you have that purpose, it gives you a drive and a meaning to get up every morning.
Exactly. Yeah, spot on. I think you just summed it up there. That is it. And those many times when you've had the chance or the temptation to stop it, but you decided not to, were those little mini battles that you won up here. And that's not only going to be the victories that you look back at that changed your life, but I won't be surprised that it's going to go on to change other people's lives as well.
I hope so. There's a point in there, actually, I want to talk about that, that should be on the Stoic triangle. It should be a Stoic square, right? It should be. Now, there's the fourth point, because talking about the ROKMAN journey.
Speak, Terry the Stoic.
This is my my philosophical quote from Terry the Stoic. Fuck 'em.
Ooh,
Naughty word, but honestly, I've always said that to myself, because when doing this, I've had so many negative people, naysayers, negative people maybe laughing at what I'm trying to achieve, oh, you can't do that, why are you doing this? And I tell you what, and I've always lived my life through this, I'll say F them, is that you're always going to have those people, right, trying to convince you what you're doing is wrong. And I think mostly it's because it's a mirror, it's a reflection of their insecurities. They can't do it, so they don't want you to do it. And
I've never understood that, why you I mean it's obviously, if someone's doing something wrong that's going to get them in trouble, you would advise someone. But I mean, I get that a lot as well, and you kind of, why are you doing this, why are you doing that, what's the point in this, what's the point in taking that course, and what's the point in close protection, whatever. But if you believe, and every great person's had these challenges, I think, again, Arnie said it a lot, he said ignore the naysayers. People said to him, he said, you're never going to get into movies, you've got this weird accent and you got this Schwarzenegger, what you're talking about, no one understands what you're saying, right? But I remember that speech of his, and he's like, ignore the naysayers, right? Who knows why they do it? Fair enough, it's probably a reflection of some kind of insecurity in them, but I've always just brushed it aside. I don't even give them time of day. It's like, thanks very much, but we're going ahead with this plan, because you gotta, I always said, you have to be like a high velocity projectile going towards your target. Like some snipers fired it towards your target, and nothing's going to get in your way. If it does, if it's an obstacle, the Stoic say the obstacle is the way, right? The obstacle will guide you. It might be a useful obstacle to say, actually, now the goal is over there, right? And you change as your journey changes. But the obstacle usually makes you stronger. And if you have that high velocity towards your goal, you will achieve it. Nothing's going to get in your way. That's the mentality we had in SAS. I've kind of tried to maintain that mentality since then. So like, you never give up, right? And I learned that from Rocky Balboa as a kid watching it. The only way you're beaten is if you give up. You can be punched down so many times, but you'd only really lose if you fail to get back up again. I think that's an important point.
Yeah, in fact, that is where the name ROKMAN came from. So
I remember you saying
it's an amalgamation of Rocky and my surname Rosamond to make ROKMAN. Yeah, I think it's
very fitting.
That is a nice point to end it on, Pav. I think be high velocity. What was it? Be a
high velocity projectile going towards your target. If anything gets in your way, learn from it, but generally destroy it, go through it.
Yeah.
Watch how your aim at your target as you go on that journey might change. The target might change because you're more informed, which is fine. Wisdom comes from knowing when to alter that path. Okay, and you learn that along the way. You might make a failure and you go the wrong way, then you bring it back in. Okay, but find out your why, because without that, you won't know where the target is. And then be your best self and launch everything you have at it, and good things will come your way.
That's it. I like that. Launch everything you've got at it. Yeah. Find your why, be your best self, and launch everything you've got at it. I love it. Pav, what's on the horizon for you? What's the future hold? Have you got any challenges set up? In fact, I've got a challenge coming up.
All right. What's that?
And I will talk to you about it. I'll text you after, because I'm not releasing it yet.
Okay.
But I wonder if you can come down and join me on it. But
okay.
What have you? Anything on the horizon for you?
Well, again, it's kind of COVID stop stuff, but since that's stopped now, I mean, I want to get back out on the hills. There's a really good, I've done it before. There's a Catran Yomp, which is for the ABF, the Soldiers Charity. That happens every June. That's a 54-miler in Scottish hills, 24-hour walk. That's quite, I want to try and get back into that again. I want to try and do a few more hill-based walks. There's some kind of, I'm working now with World Extreme Medicine. There are a bunch of medics and healthcare professionals that kind of go out into the world and deliver healthcare in extreme and climates and stuff. I'm going to see how it goes. I'm trying to push myself in that line as well. There's a few things I've got on the burner there, but I'm not entirely sure. One of them involves something crazy in Iceland, but that's really just a first, it's in the first stages yet. But I think we'll just wait and see at the moment.
Yeah. Well, let us know if anything pops up. Let us know, and we'll see how we can support you on it. And
we'll do. Yeah, definitely.
Where can, pardon me, where can people find you, Pav, if they want to follow your journey?
Oh well, I'm on.
Not your. Don't give me your address.
Yeah, right. They're not. I'm on Instagram, and it's muscularis_Maximus. Yeah, which was inspired by Roadrunner. The cartoon, because they always have that little Latin name come up. So I thought of a funny Latin name, which is kind of tongue in cheek. Pretty much, yeah, muscularis_Maximus. I'm also on Facebook. This is my name, Pavandeep Singh. And that's really it, to be honest. But I mean, I'm not some great influencer or anything like that, but I occasionally put up reasonable content and I think of some degree of value, try and think through things, and try and give something of benefit and value that people might be able to use.
Well, I personally like your posts because I find when you do speak, it is always thought through, considered and thorough, and you can't argue much with what you put up with. Like it's you make some very good points, so I think people will take a lot of value from them. You got
to think about, and you might see the journey, it evolves, right? Your thinking changes as you put stuff out there. You get challenged and you wonder, that's a good point, right? You got to really and I'm not sure what I've said in this past hour and a bit. I try to say things I believe in. Sometimes you say things you think will sound good, but you don't 100% believe in. So there's always that struggle, and that's where your kind of wisdom comes in. You try and say stuff that you really try and believe in and you want to achieve. And you need to try and be precise in your language. I think that's really important. Like read stuff and then you can articulate what you are thinking. And good language skills are highly important for all of us. And again, it's all about practice, and you just try and, a lot of trouble happens in the world because people are not precise with their language, as we've seen in social media. So just try and be precise with your language, think about stuff, be open to new ideas, keep an open mind. And that's how learning's done. That's how we all move forward towards a truth rather than fighting each other. We think, okay, I can learn from you, you can learn from me, everyone's happy, let's go home, have some tea, etc. Right? So that's it.
Well, Pav, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been really good. It's been really nice to talk through some of the philosophical, I can't even say the word. Philosophical side of ROKMAN and stuff like that. So thank you very much.
I appreciate your time, mate. It's good to have this conversation. It's been a long time coming, and I really appreciate what you're doing. It's a great thing, mate. It's helped me a lot, and it's helped so many people. So keep it up. Very much. Keep it up. When you have the thought of this getting too much, just remember David Goggins saying, you don't know me, son. You don't know me, son.
I'd rather have Pav in my ear. I'd rather have that, giving your pearls of wisdom. I'll think of them. Thank you very much, Pav, and we'll catch up soon. This isn't the only one. We will have more podcasts throughout next year as well, so I'll let you know.
I look forward to it. All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.